Okay, no.
That's
no.
crazy.
Central
That's
time
insane.
zone.
What do you mean, no?
No, the Central time zone is not the best time zone. It is.
Oh, well,
It is. In
there's
my
a reason
opinion,
it's called
maybe
Central.
the worst.
Oh, okay, no, we had to have this discussion. Why would you call it the worst? Because I'm genuinely curious.
Because you
about
have
this.
the Eastern time zone, which is the one
Mhm.
where up until this week, 3 of us were in.
Okay.
Where everyone kind of is on the same thing. Everything is scheduled around the Eastern time zone. You have Central and Mountain who are there, and they're 1 hour and 2 hour.
You're telling me Mountain time zone is worse than Central?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Or
Mountain.
Yes.
not worse, better. You're telling me it's better than
No.
Central?
No, I'm saying I know.
Mountain is the
In
worst.
order, in order. It
Okay,
goes
like in order of the America's time zone.
Yeah, East, West, Central,
Wrong.
Mountain.
Okay,
Is
I
it
can't
I'm
put
not-
West.
important to know?
I
it's
can't put
important to
West
know it is
like above Central.
East, 2-tier breaks. West, 2
Yeah.
more tier breaks.
You guys are
Central, a
just wrong.
single tier break. Mountain.
You're just
It-
wrong. Okay, okay, if you try to talk to anyone from Europe on a Western time zone, it is hell. It is actual hell. Like the
Sucks
time
to be
zone-
European then.
That's the great thing about the Western time zone. You don't have to interact with Europeans.
Honestly.
Never having to speak to Spectron again? God, that sounds like a dream come
Okay.
true.
No,
Yeah.
no. You still have to talk to Spec. Spec will fucking stay up until he'll stay up all night. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the problem. He fucking degens himself. You can't avoid him.
Okay,
He's
okay, but
inevitable.
listen, the moment that man is out of college, nah, bro, he's
Yeah.
got to find a sleep schedule.
He's fixing it,
waiting for the day that his age.
Oh, he's been
like,
fixing it for a year and a half, Dex.
Listen, his age will catch up with him one day, and that day will be hilarious because he will like all of a sudden be like, "Holy fuck, old people were right. I can't do this forever."
Oh, pure.
The funniest thing is that age is not like gonna be like 30. It's gonna be 24.
Yeah, it's like 24, 25. Like that's
Yeah.
when that shit hits, and you realize, oh fuck, I can't just do whatever anymore.
Yeah, that like 24 was the age it hit me. Like I can't stay up until midnight anymore, and then still wake up at 6 and be like, oh boy, it's gonna be a great fucking day. I'm filled with energy. I wake up at 6 now. It's just like holy shit.
That's what I'll see these like people in the BPL stuff playing till like 3 a.m. and I'm like I'll stay till like midnight my time, and I'll be like, all right guys, I'm gonna go to bed, and they'll be like, unk. I'm like, dude, my bad for trying to have a normal sleep schedule.
We don't talk about the BPL fucking Sea of Thieves day where I went to bed at like 11 o'clock, woke up the next morning at like 7, and the same 3 people were still playing Sea of Thieves.
I think I jumped into the VC when I went to the gym because I wake up and then go to the gym. So I like hopped into the VC right as they were about to leave. I was like, "What's up, guys?" And you could just hear the def inside ready to envelope them. That's certainly a word, right? That's definitely a word.
Yeah, no, it's a word.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a word. But actually, here, no, we're forgetting about 2 American time zones. Technically 3 if you want to count Guam, but I'm not gonna necessarily. You have Hawaiian, and I believe Alaska is still in a different one. I'm not counting those 2 though.
They're Mickey Mouse time zones.
They're not necessarily Mickey Mouse, but they're just
easily better than Mountain though.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mountain's the like forgotten child of time zones.
I think we could eliminate everything that exists within the Mountain time zone range in terms of geopolitical landmass, and nothing of significance would be lost.
I think you lose the city of Denver.
Oh,
I was there once in their airport, and guess what? It can go. I'm good.
The airport's actually very nice. I think it's like bigger than an entire city. I forget which one, but it's like one of the biggest airports in the world.
They're a mile in the sky. That is that is an affront to God. They need to be struck down.
Okay.
Well, if you're saying that, then technically, like Mexico City is an affront to God, since Mexico City is technically higher than Denver.
Yep.
No arguments there.
It's absolutely crazy. I've given Dex like 9 different out of context banger intros here, and he just hasn't clicked the start recording button.
No,
I bet he did like 2.5. I bet he did like 2.5 minutes ago. How's that accuracy?
You guys want to know how long it's been?
Oh, it's probably been a while, hasn't it?
4.5 minutes.
Oh, I was close. Do I win a prize for being close?
I had the half.
I'll give you credit. Like, you hid your poker face well this time. I actually didn't think it started.
There was a moment when I smiled and stared straight at the camera about a minute and a half in, and no one picked up on it.
That's the caster talking inside.
Yep, so, now that we're officially 5 minutes into the podcast, everyone, welcome back to For the Love of Prod. This is not episode 20. Why the fuck did I write down episode 20? This is episode 19. Apparently, I can't fucking count anymore.
Yeah, he actually meant to have me for episode 20, but sent the message too early, and I was like, sure, why not? He's like, shit, I guess we gotta go.
Shit happens, man. People say no, people say yes. I have to balance it. Joke. But everyone, welcome back to episode 19 of For the Love of Prod. As always, I'm joined by Huntertain, Megalass, who's now in a new time zone, and our guest this week, TeeHaychZee, who is currently in that time zone, which half of us agree is just terrible. Actually, wait, Mega, what was your stance on it? Was Central Time Zones bad?
Central, I mean, Central, it's worse. It's like 3 out of 4. It's still just meh.
I mean, whatever helps you guys sleep at night is all I'm gonna say.
Nothing does.
You know what? I'm in your time zone. That means I'm within travel distance, buddy. Lock your doors.
Yeah, okay. Shit.
Lock your doors. Turn off your computer at night. She can fucking teleport through screens.
True.
Yeah, like a me-side game everybody was playing. That's me.
It's like the Ring.
Mm-hmm.
No, I like Mega's. I like Mega's thing a little bit better.
What, the me-side game?
Yeah. Because that one, they actually do come out of computer screens and try to kill you.
Yeah. I skipped the yandere part, though. I don't do that part. I don't pretend to love you. It's just straight to murder.
That's going to be a fun thing to explain to my parents when they listen to this. But... yeah, I don't... like. Here's the thing. They didn't talk to me about furries. They didn't talk to me about Hatsune Miku, so I'm pretty happy about that, but that also lets me know they probably did not listen that long into that episode. But, guys, let's actually, since we're now a decent amount of way into the episode, let's just kind of skip to it. Actually, like, T, why don't you introduce yourself? That's one thing I want to start doing with all of our guests, since I normally don't. We normally just go straight into the questions, but why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I guess. So I'm TeeHaychZee, I guess. I guess. Yeah, I actually don't really know who I am. No, so I'm a producer. I guess I do observing occasionally. Technical director, and replay stats guy, and just general esports stuff. What games I've done, like Val, Overwatch, COD. I'm literally just trying to remember what my Twitter bio is right now at this point.
Pull up your Twitter bio.
Yeah, that's basically it. Just do a lot of the broadcast stuff. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you for that, T. But T, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast before, but we always ask 2 questions to our guests every week, and then after those 2 questions, we spiral into the insanity of what is our normal kind of conversation. But the first one is always, what got you into esports, and more specifically, what got you into doing esports production?
Yeah, so when I was in school a decade ago, not actually a decade ago, but like when I was in college, my freshman year, there was right across my dorm, there was our school's PBS station. And at the time, I was going to school for computer science and film, and like the TV station was in the same building as the film. So I like checked it out, and they had a like an orientation to like volunteer there, basically. Wanted to check it out, and so I did that. I really liked it, and then I spent 4 years there, basically working out of the PBS station. So like I got to basically work on like a real switcher and like actually direct news that showed up on TV and such for a while. And then when I graduated, one day I was like chilling on my PC, and I was like, man, I really miss this. So I looked up like esports production, basically, because I was like, there's no way I can get into like normal production. Since my degree, despite talking about television, my degree is actually based in audio. One of my degrees is. So I like looked up esports production because I was really into Overwatch League at the time, and I was like, surely there's like smaller ones. And I think I ran into the BGG Broadcast GG server. And from there, I basically cold DM'd like a lot of people on the list, and I hit up Juke, who is like a really old name. And Juke directed me to, what was it? one of the old like Trank heads, whoever the like old broadcast manager was. I wish I remembered her name. But they brought Cav. Was it Cav? I don't know. It wasn't Cav. He was basically leaving right as I joined. But I think let me check the resume. It was the season 8 Trank finals. That's when I like basically shadowed. I remember like my first observing it. I had a really terrible PC and I was on power line Ethernet because I was set up in like my family's like dining room basically. Because we were just like I just get back from college and we were figuring out the setup for me. So yeah, I did that and then I really liked it, so I kept doing it with like Trank and then kind of started growing from there. Just like if there was a game I want to do, like Call of Duty, I reached out to some people. Valorant just reached out to some people, and well, now I'm here, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I almost did the exact same thing. Once I first started like casting outside my school with joining the BGG server, and like I would like talk to anyone who wanted an Overwatch caster, and eventually I ran into Hippie, and if I could find the fucking like message I sent Hippie, like I typed way too much just for like wanting to cast all the way back.
You formalized that shit.
Yeah,
basically.
All the way back in Peaches.
Yeah.
And like he randomly resent it to me like a year and a half ago.
Oh, that's fire.
Just what the message was. Yeah, fuck. I typed a whole fucking 4 sentences out saying like what I've done, why I want to do this, like other than just like saying, hey, yeah, I just want to cast.
Yeah.
But like I like we've talked about a little bit when we first started the podcast. For anyone that really wants to try to find stuff, BGG is probably a really good place to do it. I don't know if it's the best. It might be the best for just I think it might just be the best for people who are just trying to get started with it.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter, Mega, what I know both you guys got started just by already being in the leagues, but have you guys ever used BGG?
No, not to this point.
Yeah, no, I can't. I don't believe so.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to like get into like different. It's good if you want to like expand into different games and stuff, but like it's a good jumping off point if you have like really no idea where to start, but you want to like you want to do broadcast stuff. But like I found a lot of good talent and producers of service and stuff sort of spawn in from like the communities they like just join naturally. So like that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah, and it's always really fun when you see those people who are already in the communities, who are players, who eventually go over to, want to be a caster, and because either they think they could do it better, or they just don't like how people are casting, or they want to go in and do observing or producing, which happened a lot more in the past. Like 2 years ago, it seemed like there was a lot more like players who would want to join in the production crew. We don't. I sadly haven't seen that much lately. Kind of sucks.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's happened semi recently, not recently, but it happened semi frequently in COD because I know a lot of the observers there are like people who still play and like compete fairly frequently, especially on like the college COD scene. Valorant, I can't speak too much to Valorant because like the thing with Overwatch that like worked well was that at least the systems were pretty easy to get like set up. Like Salmon GG is super easy for anyone to step into, but like even before then, it was relatively easy for like an observer to come in and then observe, and that's still like in Overwatch that's still the case, but in other games there's like a little bit of particularity about it and such, and it's less like to get it right, there's a little bit of a curve, I would say. So it's like not as easy, and it's kind of the same with COD.
And COD's an interesting one because, like, I think at one point, at least I'm speaking for myself here. Like the only game I had played for like a couple years was only COD. Maybe I would take a break or two to play like Minecraft or Madden growing up. But outside of that, it's like, okay, I'm only playing COD. I think from Modern Warfare 2 all the way to Black Ops like 3,
Okay.
Like I think that was because that was basically 7th grade till senior in high school. I played them almost religiously. Like anytime there was a double XP weekend, I'm fucking sitting in my
Yeah.
chair 10 hours a day, grinding shit out that doesn't matter, but it's like I was addicted to it. It's always interesting to look at COD because I feel like from an outside perspective looking in, not really following the scene that much, it's still incredibly big, but it's not as big as it was in the past. I don't necessarily know how good of a scene there is, like there is for Overwatch and Valorant a little bit, where there are like leagues made by a community that aren't just for pros.
So there actually is. I don't want to say I'm tapped into the COD scene, but I decently am. Like I do college COD. I just joined WXC, which is basically like COD game changers,
Hmm.
or like calling out hero for COD, but it's like community ran. And I know there are a few decent like community leagues. There's like a U under 18 league. There's a few other leagues. I actually get like decent quote unquote tier 2, tier 3 teams. So I would say it's definitely like it has some depth to it. The problem is it's usually like the idea is that all of it funnels towards like a tier 1, right? Like
Yeah.
or not necessarily like tier 1, but you play in those to like keep growing, and then you eventually hit challengers, and then challengers is where you try to make yourself known and stuff. But like tier there's always a joke that COD is very much a friendship league. So like there's always in the community people are like they'll reuse the same players that have been in the league and like have gotten destroyed,
Mm.
and then like they'll go back to challenger. Like they're basically challengers rebirths. Well, they'll do really good in challengers, get back in the league, and then they'll be terrible again. And there's not necessarily a like motivation to try new people, though. That mentality is starting to shift, so it could happen more. But at least in COD, it's definitely like there is community leagues,
Mm.
and it has some decent depth, but nothing. I don't think on like the same level as Overwatch in terms of like that community sense and like that grassroots sense.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks for COD, considering at one point it really did seem like that was the biggest game in the world outside of FIFA. That
Mm-hmm.
released every year. Um, but moving on now to the second part of the question we always ask, what kind of keeps you coming back? I know like you work with a lot of stuff, and I'm assuming some of it is paid, so there is that reason for it as well. But what is like the main reason you keep on coming back to do stuff in esports?
I was actually thinking about this a lot. Like having the existential crisis type beat.
Oh no.
Uh,
Please don't
no,
tell me that.
but
Then I'll feel bad for asking these questions to people.
yeah, actually, this question has motivated me to quit esports, so I'm disappearing off the face of the earth
Fuck.
after the.
Damn.
No,
Damn, that's the well. That's the podcast. I'm ruining it for people,
yeah.
y'all.
That's crazy.
But for me, I think with Kesey coming back, so I recently watched. I keep bringing up COD because that's kind of the game I'm most like interested in right now.
Mhm.
And there was recently the like DreamHack Major there, and I know one of the observers who worked it, and like the observer caught basically this player Hydra. He gets like a 4-piece, and like it's crazy hype. And then I'm thinking back to some of the stuff I've observed or like just worked on. Specifically, there was the Funhaver LAN that I directed, and I still look back this a lot is like right at the end, that like victory moment when they like get the final kill and then the players get up and celebrate. Like that dopamine hit is just like unbeaten. Like I called the camera, then I called the music, and the music hits, and it's like a symphony. It's like an orchestra. So like that feeling, I think of like getting the players to pop off and like seeing that and like saying that you kind of orchestrated that is like, really cool. So that's like a big factor. And then another reason is just because like I think like just the skills that I have, where like I mentioned stats. I like if someone sees my Twitter this past month in May, I've been doing a lot of like stats work,
Hmm.
and posting that. So like I have a lot of data background, and that's like not super common in esport. I mean, there are like a lot of stats people, but like from a broadcast perspective, stats that like are more specifically for broadcast, it's really refreshing for me because I do like a lot of data stuff during my normal day job, and so to like do kind of data stuff in a what do you call like a hobby sort of way, I think is really interesting. Like I've woken up this past month and I was like just thinking of really cool ideas and stuff and trying to um find ways to incorporate that. So I would say like that's been another reason that's like kept me going on esports.
Yeah, and I'm like, here I'm trying to pull up some of your like so, like this is some of the stuff that you post on your Twitter, which is the stats for Rivals Fight Night. Why is that? I'm sorry. You're no longer the cat.
Oh shoot! I just realized.
Yeah, you're no longer Reach.
Darn.
But like, this is an incredibly cool part of. Okay, Mega got bigger there for a second. But like, this is an incredibly.
I just really wanted to see the stats up close, dude. Like, especially that text on the bottom. It's kind of hard to read. I can't lie to you.
Yeah, it's a little. It looks like the font's a little bit too bolded.
Yeah, the Fortnite font doesn't make it easy. The problem with this that I had to like grapple with is like getting like with these stats graphics. The problem with it is you want to get like the right information on there, but you don't want to overload information. So like for especially like these, like it was important for me to say obviously what team and what time, like the time that it took for the map, but then also like when it happened. Which I guess I could have put just the event, but like in Fight Night, there's multiple like matches happening, so it's not super simple. And like putting it actually pointed out problem. This graphic is technically wrong. That fifth top, like on the top right, it was wrong because I had basically Rivals has it's a whole thing, but I put in information incorrectly, and so that's actually Virtus Pro that has another record. They have 5 out of the 11 records, which was super interesting to me. And that's another thing as well. Like I mentioned the stats. One of like my inspirations, if you guys know like Secret Base or like John Boyce,
yes.
He's like a big, super cool sports writer. He does a really cool stuff, specifically like Dorktown and stuff. So I gobble that up basically, and like that really inspires me to do like bring something like that to esports per se, because there's a lot of cool stories that just aren't really told. And I think it's really cool to put into context like how good a player is doing, because there's always this debate of like this player better than this player, is this player to go and stuff, or this team like go. So like having that context to me and like sharing it is really really cool.
Yeah, and before I get on to what I was gonna say about this, I fucking love Secret Base. I love the Bob documentary.
Oh yeah.
That's such an interesting thing considering my dad's name is Bob.
Mm-hmm. Mine is actually my favorite one is the Dave Steve one.
Yes.
Yeah, which is another baseball documentary for those unacquainted. What's really cool, Dave Steve went to my school, which I didn't find out until I saw the documentary. And just the way like the story was told is very interesting to me, especially for someone who's not into baseball in like the slightest. So like I found it super cool.
Yeah, and it like their entire channel, or the entire Dorktown channel, is basically it's just stats, numbers, math, and functions, but with the guise of hey, there's sports as well, which is incredibly interesting. Like they even said it before, there was people who do not like sports that love those videos because of all like the numbers and stuff they were talking about. But getting back into this now, like like you said, I love when people do this, or when leagues do this where they talk about the stats, they talk about the records. I feel like it adds more depth to the game, and it's something with OWCS right now where I'm not necessarily the happiest about, because we're not necessarily seeing all the stats for everything. The only way you can is if you go through like the Faceit website, but there's like interesting stats that you could be seeing in so many games. And I mean, you do this pretty frequently with a lot of the games that you do. Like you have done an incredible job bringing like stats that, unless you're truly digging around, you're not going to be able to find them.
Yeah, I made it a goal this month. It's something I've had on my to-do list for a while. Something like I had a goal this month to basically like for the entire month on weekdays post a stat on shows that I want like worked on, at least that I have in my database. So that's like Valorant specifically, the Funhaver stuff.
Hmm.
Because I have all of those matches, I think, from 2024 onward. And then Deadlock Rivals, like all the Fight Night stuff, since I have that data. And I think that's, yeah, that's about it. So, like, for reference as well, all this data is something that I've sourced myself. It's not like you'll see a lot of Twitter profiles, they'll like get the data from like a different source, especially with Valorant. They'll be like your VLRs and your RIB. But and this is something I'm really proud of, is that like all the data is something like I've sourced myself. I've gotten from the API. I've like uh, parsed it and like formatted it in a way, and then I've gone through. So it's like it's another way for me to like stretch my wings in terms of like some of the technical stuff.
And do you make all the graphics yourself as well?
Yeah, these ones I've all made myself.
I mean, like I love the graphics as well. Like as someone who makes graphics in kind of my free time, it's always fun to see how different people do them. But like,
yeah, that SpongeBob one is also a stat that I've done too. Her also a graphic I made. I actually recreated it from scratch.
that SpongeBob picture is perfect in so many ways. But like, this is from. So you worked on the Gauntlet as well, right?
I did. I worked as a replay operator. Yeah.
Yeah, you have fun in that 16-hour stream.
Well, I only worked half of it, so I was fortunate, quote unquote, fortunate enough to be like only on the B stream. It was me and Omi who were the only ones that were. Oh, and Low too, technically. That were scheduled for the B stream only, and then everyone else was the entire day. I personally enjoyed it mostly because, well, like long days are long days. Like I'm used to that. I'm not used to that. I would say I don't want to make it seem like I can work 16-hour days pretty consistently. But like I've worked on broadcasts before, and replay, like I liked it because replays I think were, to me, were kind of like, it's something I don't do often. So it's like a different school I got to try, which is cool. And plus, like the people I were with, though they were so dead. So like, but the people I were with were pretty cool. But like, yeah, they were they were dead by like hour 6, and at some point I definitely felt it. But I thought overall it was a pretty, like it was a pretty solid show. I think I had Reach talked about it last week, or whatever. But like the format obviously needed some work and such, and it's just one of those things where people don't understand what actually happens with production and like timelines and stuff. And we had that whole debate. There's not much more to talk about it. So
Yeah. Now, and like talking like turning a little bit more towards Fight Night now, and everything that everything that goes on there. Like we've had it on Solomon, we've had it on Reach, we've had it on a lot of people who have done stuff with Fight Night, and it's insane to kind of see how big Fight Night is every week. Like I'm always very impressed that it's easily pulling in over 1,000 viewers for a one night kind of show, which I think is just insane. But like that entire crew, like you're a part of it. It's I don't know what Solomon necessarily calls it, because I think he's the one who's contracting the work out. I don't want to make that assumption, but like that entire group is incredibly talented, and I would say the majority of them all kind of come from BPL. I know there's probably others that aren't originated from there, but like it's insane to think like how many people have all kind of started in the same kind of spot and now are doing like these huge productions, like you are as well, with having to do that. You did the Funhaver LAN as well, right? Like
yeah, I was the production lead for that. Yeah, that's basically, I don't call that my baby, but that was like, from a broadcast side, that was majority, like a lot of it I had strong input on. And I mean, I directed the show, so whatever you saw that show was me.
Can you talk a little bit about like actually being the director of a show like that? Like I know we've had on other people in the past who've talked about being directors of smaller things, but like this was an actual like large in-person event. You have multiple teams. You have the teams. You have everyone behind the scenes as well. Like, what was it kind of like leading that event as the director?
Yeah, so it was definitely very chaotic, in a good way, but there's a lot of pre-planning that we had to do. Myself, Reach, I don't know if she's been mentioned, but Kiana, she's one of the big people behind like the Funhaver stuff. And yeah, like us three really had to like plan out a lot of stuff. We had our run a show coming in. We had kind of an idea of what we wanted to do package wise. Like we knew we wanted to basically take the show that we had online and try and elevate it in person. And for me with LAN specifically, and when I going into the show, what I want to do is absolutely capture that like player personality as much as possible. Because like with LANs and like with online tournaments, that's the thing you miss is you'll see like the good gameplay, but you don't see the people behind it. And that I think is like the heart of esports. And so that is very important to me. So like from a director point of view and like coming in, we had all these ideas and then basically everything went to hell. Like I guess I'm talking from the like perspective of just like the Funhaver stuff, but a lot of it was like changing things on the fly because we find out that our staff is pretty limited in terms of what they provided to us, and like the equipment was entirely new to us, and like so certain show elements couldn't work, so a lot of it is pivoting, um, as well as just like getting tech stuff going. Like every LAN you'll work, there will be a tech day. And thankfully we did have an actual tech day to find out a few of the issues, but a lot of it is just quick on your feet thinking, trying to figure out, okay, this isn't working. Like, can we pivot to this or can we fix it? Whatever. And that's a lot of the pre-show stuff. And then when it's on the show, like, so from my point of view, when I'm directing, again, my whole thing is to get kind of the player personality as well as try and capture the whole LAN experience. So like one of the things I was doing there was really trying to emphasize the player cameras. We unfortunately could not get player case cams working, which really sucked. And before I did that show, I was always, when I saw a LAN, right, like a community LAN, I was like, dude, where are the face cams? Like, you're at LAN, like, I want to see face cams. I will never make that critique again because holy hell, it is incredibly complex from a technical point of view to actually get face cams working in a legitimate, like, good way. But so like my compromise there was to every time a round ended is bam, like player reaction and such. And just like for my point of view, I was just directing, so I was just telling people what to do. And I had a technical director who actually knew the technical side of it, so I didn't have to actually press buttons. There a lot of it, like the big thing when you're at a big event like that is the communication. We had different channels. So we had like a prod channel, which was basically anyone who was actually doing something related to the show. Then there was like the admin channel, so there's like their two stage admins, as well as Tim Funhaver, basically like from the player side, making sure that the games run smoothly, and like they're also managing the rest of the like actual event because it wasn't just a broadcast focused one; it was an actual like LAN, people go and play and stuff. So they were putting out fires. And so the first day I remember is we were all kind of on one channel and like they're doing admin stuff while I'm trying to call the show. And I'm like, guys, I need you off this channel. Like, let's move it somewhere else. And so that like communication was like very, very important. And like an example of where communication faltered, which if you watch back the show, you'll never really notice it. We did a decent job of covering it, but when it happened, it was, I think, that first walkout on not the grand finals, but like that championship Sunday. It was the first walkout. We basically tried to rehearse it, couldn't really rehearse it. And so then Funhaver calls the teams, and the plan for it was to take the teams walking out in the hype tunnel and then kind of switching cameras to follow them. But when Tim called them, the players basically got sent out early, and so I see them on multiple that they're already moving before I'd even showed on camera. So what I did, I think, was I had like that's a quick pivot I had to do where I basically stay on Funhaver for a little bit and then switch to the second camera, like skipping a step in the show. And so it looks fine, but like that I wanted to show because the tunnel they're coming from was like flashing and stuff, and it would have been really cool. As well as just like sometimes you have to tell your camera operators to get into a certain position, so you get this angle. Like in our grand finals one, we had a camera operator that was following cameras or following players, and so they had to kind of be doing their things. So it's a lot of communication and like telling people what to do. Another important part of a show like that is just being like firm and basically like in like the smaller productions, we're kind of like goofing around
Mhm.
and stuff. Like no matter what it is, I think even in like an OWE's CS show, for example, I can't speak to this, but I can imagine like if they're doing it online, they're probably in like a formula where they can kind of the production team at least can kind of chill and like goof around. Like they'll obviously, I'm sure they're at like the top of their craft and they're still making good calls, but they're also joking, having a fun time. But during that LAN, because there's so many moving parts and each person has sort of their own role, we have an audio person, we have a lighting person, we have a graphics person, right? And especially because they had to balance not only the broadcast perspective but the like viewing perspective as well, that it was basically no nonsense the entire time. And like I had to be pretty firm with people and like basically I don't want to say put my foot down because I there were times that I did have to put my foot down, but most of the time it's like I need you to listen to me now, or we're gonna have problems, basically. So all that to say, that's kind of the experience of like at least that show in particular, and I think other shows that I've done in the past that have been in person. Like back when I was schooling, when I was in school, when I was doing directing, it's kind of similar. Where like one of the show, it's similar, but it's also since it was at like a news station, it's very formulaic. Where you're like you start with your camera up top to get like the whole wide angles, then you go to the middle camera, your talent says something, then you cut to like the video of the news, and then you go back to talent, and it's very formulaic. So there's like different ways when it works in like live events like that. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't like. I like as someone who's only ever done casting and observed once, like I could not imagine what it's like to actually be the director of an entire show, especially one like that incredibly big where you have like how large was the actual like crew that you guys had? Was it 10, 20 people or was it more?
So from the Funhaver side, I had to think of the numbers, but there was from the production side, there was me directing. There was Kiana, who's essentially like kind of the Swiss Army knife of it all. So she was contracted as an observer, but did so much stuff, and that show would have fallen apart without her. Reach was an observer slash content person. We had Orange and Low2 come out. They kind of were flexes, so that's 5 people. Um, that's from the production side, like our production side. That is it. Then we had talent, which was Zobi Edu, so that's 7. We had we had Kai, who was replaced, so that's 8. Tim is technically production, that's 9, and then we had 2 admins for stage, 3 admins, sorry, which was 12, I think. So I want to say 12 people. 13. We had a social media manager. 13. Yes. So there's about 13 people from our side, and then HyperX had their own staff. So the event was at the HyperX Arena. HyperX had a audio person. They had a technical director. They had a graphics person. Our graphics person was also like our main like leader, and he kind of got forced around everywhere. Which led to issues I can't get into, but then they had a few sort of like I don't want to call them intern staff, but very like new staffs. Yeah, and so I would say for like the total crew ended up being, at least from our side, was like 13, and then HyperX probably gave us another 10 people to just kind of put around wherever. But like I mainly focused on the core 13 of us, and like HyperX people I kept pretty limited in what they did besides our audio and our TD, because those were the 2 people that were directly important to the broadcast side, and like those I asked to go above and beyond for me, which they did, thankfully.
So I mean, like that's a big group of people working that event. Um, and it's kind of where I thought it would be. Like I said, I thought 10, 20 people for that big of an event ended up being around 25. It kind of sounded like at the end. But for an event like that, that kind of is where I was thinking it would be to make it run smoothly. However, like you kind of said, it didn't necessarily go as smooth, but it was still a very well put on event. But I mean, you did mention it there, like with stuff being primarily online, a lot, especially in esports, and that's not at LANs. Everything's online. You get into some stuff where silliness is definitely afoot, and with 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 the leagues that me, Hunter, and Mega normally cast in, we know the silliness and the goofiness that kind of goes on with some stuff. And some of the people you've talked about are those people who going into something, they are going to bring their own certain charm and goofiness to whatever they're doing. Still put on a really really great job and still do a really great job, but that you're gonna have to, that there's gonna be some sort of like level of goofiness going on. Like when you're working online, like do you know how to deal with that, or do you kind of just lean into that? Yeah, this is gonna happen. I'm just gonna let it happen, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, with like online productions and like that goofiness you're talking about, and like certain people, usually from my point of view, I tend to let it like I don't say let it slide, but like I'll just kind of let it happen. Mostly because when I need something to get done, I like am pretty firm about it. I'll be like, guys, comms, I need you to do this. And they'll listen to me usually because I think like it's a respect thing. And so and like everyone there wants to also put on the best show, like you said. So like when we're all at the people that at least I work with are all at that point where we can be 100% professional. We can like 100% like put on a goddamn good show. Like I'll go to that first fight night for Rivals. There wasn't too trying to remember. I mean, there was definitely some goofiness, but like it wasn't crazy because we really wanted to put on because like first impressions are important, and so we really wanted to put on a good show. So like like when we say goofiness, so we're pretty clear to talk about Reach and Orange as like the main culprits. If I'm being up front, I'm gonna call them out there.
No,
But
you're perfectly fine to call them out.
yeah, like well they know too, but
yeah.
like those two as well, like usually, especially though they're best friends, so like they will just like be goofy with each other. But like that show, they locked the hell in as well, and they're very good at doing that. Where like one moment, and I think they both talked about it on a podcast, where like they'll have their fun, they'll like treat it like they hang out with friends, but then there's also moments where they know like okay, we gotta lock in, and they'll lock the hell in and put on some goddamn like good broadcast. So like that overall, like not just those two, but like for any when it's like goofiness and stuff, like I just trust the people that like when they're when I need them to put on a good show or when I need them to do something that they'll do it. And as long as they do that, I don't really have a problem with like how goofy or silly you are in the show.
Yeah, and definitely when we both had like you said, Reach and Orange have been on this podcast before, and that was a big part of both their episodes was talking about like, hey, we know that you guys we know what we're getting when you guys are in there, but we also know that there's going to be something that is happening during the game that either we'll be seeing in the Discord chat going on where they're just posting pictures of stuff, or they'll just be like having a lot of fun with it. But they still do an incredible job, and they are honestly some of the best people to work with. Anytime I get the chance to, and I imagine Hunter and Mega would say the exact same thing. Like they do an incredible job with it. But like Hunter, Mega, like I mean, we've all worked with T. We all know how good he is with it. But is there like anything that you guys necessarily want to know more about, like what kind of goes into what T does?
I was gonna say, have I worked with T?
I think once on like probably a BPL project, maybe.
Like
Certainly
probably
you
like
have.
one time in like
Yeah.
one specific instance.
It's been rare, definitely.
Yeah, like,
Same with Hunter. Unfortunately, it's been
yeah,
relatively rare.
I know we worked together back in old Tranquility days. I know
Yes.
that much. But that is not on record anywhere, so it doesn't actually exist, obviously.
Yeah, I don't work the CGO stuff mostly because I'm in a fortunate position to where I have a normal day job, like a normal 9 to 5, so that's like basically funding a lot of the esports stuff for me, and like so for me, esports is like purely a hobby. And there's definitely like up front, there's definitely going to be a point in the next few years where I'll be like, yeah, I'm done, and just call it. So, but like because of that, I'm fortunate enough to be very picky on what I do and don't do. Like the paid or unpaid part of it doesn't necessarily matter to me, but it's more of like, is the actual production, like the concept of it, cool? Which is why I like working the BPL ones, because I think the Salmon GG package is legitimately one of the best packages I've worked with, and that tech is so cool to me that I want to keep learning more about it and such, and just from like a technical point of view. And then like any of the other stuff I do is mostly just like A, the people there are good, B, like the talent of gameplay, or like the level of gameplay is like interesting, or C, like the concept of the production, because like sometimes it might be a one-off event that's really interesting. Like C, that is like interesting enough to me to where I'll take it. So like because of that, I'm not, all these kind of make it seem like I'm applying that CTO is garbage. It's not the case, but I just like I don't have that much of an interest in Overwatch anymore. Straight up, like I still do it, but it's very like on. It's not like my main focus. Like I've talked more about COD today and
Yeah.
like Val stuff today, which are like the two games that I like working with. Um, so because like I'm in that fortunate position, those are usually the gigs I like to take.
Yeah, and like I'm not gonna blame you for necessarily not having Overwatch be like your go-to anymore. Like it's perfectly fair. It's not what it used to be, and honestly, right now Rivals, Valorant, and Fight Night to an extent are incredibly popular games. Like it, if I had learned them, I would also be casting them as well, and doing stuff with them as well. But like with the wide variety of games that you work with here, like what is the one that you kind of look at as like it, like what in your opinion, what's the what's the most difficult game to actually like work on or work with?
Um, so that's a good question. There's two sides of this question. There's like the most difficult in terms of like technicality of it, and like the depth of producer knowledge, and like I guess where, not knowledge, but like where you can go with it. And then there's difficult and difficult to actually work with. So both of those, not both of those, but like difficult to work with, 100% is going to be Call of Duty. Um, because that game is a disaster of a spectating experience. I bitched to so many people about this. Basically, there have been many instances where the spectator client has just broken on a random update. So, example I'll give is, so this bug has been happening throughout the entire year of Black Ops 6, where basically there will be a, like, you'll have your player names on the top, and each of it is supposed to have a number next to it. So it's supposed to be 1 to 8, and then the mini map corresponds to it. So like, oh, you click player 6, and it goes to player 6 on the mini map, and player 6 in the thing. There's basically been a bug where the numbers are incorrect. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll see 2, 3, 4, 46, for example. And you're like, what the hell? So like the 46 still corresponds to 4. Like on the player list, it's still 1, 2, 3, 4 from abundance. So you can still observe, but like mentally, I'll look at like player 2, and I think player 2 is number 2 on my keyboard, but it's actually number 1. So from like an observing point of view, it's literal hell. And then there have also been moments where I have 3 number 5s on the map. I'm not kidding. This has happened in like a tier 1 in the CDL, which was just horrible. And one day, with COD, we were working a broadcast, and I think like one day it's fine, and the next day the update dropped, and they got rid of the button that lets you swap like the spectator setting side. So like you have your team 1 side. Let's use like Optic and FaZe example. So like Optics team 1, FaZe's team 2 in the game. So you have your colors and stuff, and then they swap sides, right? So there used to be a button. You click a button, all the colors and stuff switch. Yeah, they just got rid of that randomly for one update. It hasn't been back. So every time teams switch sides, is you have to go and change the colors. You have to change the names and stuff, which means when you're working in like a lower league where you have to tell players to wait because your production is changing the colors, you can imagine how that's going to go, where the players, they'll switch and they'll start to go. And Call of Duty as well, it's not like an observer host a lobby. It's the players host a lobby because Call of Duty is peer to peer, and so like ping's pretty important and such. Yeah, like from a game point of view, it's just been every time there's a new update, I think what's gonna break today. And as well, like from a data point of view, there's just not great tooling. Like the scoreboard, there's been a scoreboard bug as well, where like the kills are wrong and such. But beyond that as well, it's not as easy to get data. It's similar to Overwatch where like the data isn't super accessible, though like Overwatch has the Faceit API now. So like for Faceit leagues, you can technically get like the scoreboard data, but like COD doesn't have that. So lose out on that. But like then to the other side of the coin, where it's like difficult in terms of like technical depth, I would say I want to say Valorant for sure. I think Valorant for me has been a lot of experimenting and stuff. Like the Funhaver package is a lot of me just experimenting and seeing what I can do there. And from like an observer point of view, you have to have I think you have to have very good knowledge of the game. Like you can't just be like, oh, I know FPS and I've played CS before, so I can kind of get an idea of how it is. That can get you part of the way, but there's still a lot of different parts, like a lot of settings, for example, that like with early Overwatch, there's like the Hellfire Spacebar stuff like that for Valorant. And then as well, just like from a package point of view, I think there's been a lot of there's been a lot of like different graphics that are important for the viewer to really get understand the whole context of the series and the match. That like I think a lot of shows might miss if they don't have super experienced people. Um, yeah, so I would say that's like sort of the two sides of the coin there.
And I mean, like, I don't necessarily know what it's like to kind of have to deal with that for the most part. Like, I mean, I know the problems there are with the Overwatch thing, with Overwatch, but I mean, it's funny that COD has those huge problems, considering like that's such a big game. You think they would try to fix them almost immediately, and same thing with Valorant. But I feel like how you kind of talked about it, it's a little bit less uh problems in Valorant. It's just more you need to kind of know a little bit more about the technical side of it, kind of like you said. Um, but I mean, like, have you ever done like one-off things where like maybe you've hopped into Apex for a moment? You do like you said with Deadlock. Was it kind of like working with Deadlock in a game that is it's still in alpha, right, or is it in beta?
I think it's an alpha. Upfront, I don't really work in Deadlock, so like I have the reason I mention like I think if you look at my Twitter bio, I've only put games that I like feel confident in. Deadlock is not one of them. I think I only posted Deadlock stats because I have that data, and the analysis you can do is actually really interesting. But like one-off games, has happened more recently to me. There was a one-off event I did for like it's like Fortnite's version of CS:GO, or like
Ah,
it's Fortnite tactical. I don't know what it's called. I did a technical directing show for that, and that was interesting because there's not an actual spectator client. So we had all of the player feeds come in, and we had to kind of show the gameplay through that, which was was definitely an experience because obviously as you're switching between like if you go from blue team to red team, uh first the scores would change, and then like if like a normal game has like something at the top telling you what team is what, but those would be wrong if you like swap sides because like blue would be on left and red would be on right, but if you start taking a red POV, then red's on left and blue's on right.
it's
So
like that.
there's it's like just the player POV perspective. So yeah, that was an interesting one. And then trying to remember what else was wrong with that game. Nothing else was really wrong with that game, but it was like doing that one off. That thankfully, since I was just technical directing, there wasn't much like actual knowledge I need to know of the game. I think I'm trying to remember if there's one-off games I've observed. I don't think so because if I'm observing, I have to really not really like the game, but I have to like the game at least in somewhat, or I've played it, and so I pretty much like if someone asked me, I think I got asked once to do what was it called, like a Battleborn. It was a game
Battleborn?
that Gedster, I think you guys know
Yeah,
Ged.
we know Ged.
Yeah, he reached out to me about it. I don't remember exactly what it's called. I don't think it's Battleborn, but it was like a game I hadn't really heard of, and I looked into it, and I was like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable doing this.
I think I know what game it would probably be because I like there have been a couple games he's talked about that he absolutely loves and that there is like a small scene for it.
Mhm.
I just can't remember the name, and that's the worst thing with me is I can't
Yeah,
remember names.
yeah, I
Um,
can't remember it either.
but like when you get asked to do these one-offs, like you just said, it's kind of a thing of like how comfortable you are with it. Uh, it is it more of a like the comfortability thing. If you had say it was something like Rainbow Six Siege, uh,
Mhm.
would you be able? Would you take that one? Would you take that as a one-off, knowing, or have you? I don't know how to phrase it. Would you take like in a Rainbow
Yeah,
Six?
I think I get what you're saying. So technically, I have worked the Rainbow Six event. It was the Collegiate 25 finals. But I was like a producer from like a purely producer stand. So like generally in like online events, when we say producer, it's kind of like producer, director, TD rolled into one. But in this case, I was just a producer, so I was like keeping the game on time. I actually worked that one with Hippie. He was the replay op for that. Yeah. And so like that, I really didn't have to know too much of the game. I think it depends on the role. For observing, definitely like if you asked me to do Siege, I'd be like, no, I know better Siege observers, so I'd be like, I'm going to direct you to that. But for like directing, TDing, and like producing, for example, generally I think I probably would take those depending on the show, mostly because from a high level, directing and TDing is pretty similar. Or like it's the general like concepts of it or like the fundamentals are game agnostic, where you have your roster scene, you have like a bracket scene. Depending on the game, you have like a draft or like a character select of some sort, and then you have game and like if you have a multi OBS setup, usually you'll have like either two POVs or like a POV free cam. And so that's just like kind of catching action and you rely on your observers to call like take me, take me, or if it's one observer, it's easy. Um so yeah, I think like in those roles I'd probably do the one off because that's much easier to like apply my like background into.
And you bring up an interesting thing right there because you did with being either the producer or the director, you always have these voices kind of like talking to you. Uh, is it difficult having like in these big events that you've done where there's probably maybe two, three people that are talking to you at a time, like trying to decipher maybe like what is necessarily the thing you should be taking if they're all saying like, "Hey, take this right now, take me right now."
Um so like that hasn't happened too often where there's like multiple people calling for to be taken. But I think in the case that that does happen, oftentimes like what I'll do is it like that's where then your game knowledge comes into play. So I'll use Marvel Rivals as an example, because Solomon has had this happen a few times where like both POVs basically have something happening, and I don't know exactly what Solomon does there, but like from my point of view, I'm looking at um what is the like win objective for right, like who basically is either has the momentum or needs the momentum, or what's the storyline here? Where it's like, is this happened? You're like, yes, that was hype, So like, I guess the example is maybe be like one team has 99%, the other team is coming back, and like potentially is going to like cap the point and win, like basically do a comeback. So like in a case like that, let's say like blue has the 99%, they're trying to hold it, red is trying to come back. What I'd probably do is take like if both things actions happen at the same time, I probably take the red POV. Mostly because I think like that momentum of them coming back and potentially taking the map is much more of an interesting story to tell than a team that's held it at 99 and like is about to just kind of sweep them away or like shut them down. Like that then is that like storytelling part, which like everyone everyone in esports has probably mentioned like storytelling at some point, or like it's if you're not talking about storytelling, it's I don't want to say you're a bad like esports person, but it's an important part, and you have to keep that in mind if you're going to be like if you're going to consider yourself a good or like great esports person. Just in no matter what role, it can be director, observer, replay, producer. Like that story part is really important. So keeping that in mind, when you have like these multiple voices, the voices in your head, both like the observers as well as your own demons, like when they're sorry, I want to throw that in there. But when they're like all kind of going for you, you kind of think from like uh story point of view and like a spectating point of view, like what's going to look the best, and so you kind of follow your code based on that.
Yeah, you throwing in the demons.
Yeah,
I get that. I get that.
tell you, dude. So when I was working the Funhaver events, there were more voices than that 15 talking at once.
Man.
Man, that's you can take that multiple ways. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I'm gonna at least take it as a joke, so it's a good thing at the moment. But no, like we've talked about storytelling and storylines in the past here, especially when we've had other casters on, because while the directors, the producers, the observers are all trying to create a storyline throughout an entire series, or maybe it's through an entire season if you're following a team. The casters have to try to pick up on that, and it's like one thing where I think we've all kind of said it in the past, like that's one thing we've all really worked on, or we all really knew we needed to work on, if we want to necessarily continue trying to be the best casters that we possibly could, because we are the ones who are actually vocalizing it out there. So it's an incredibly interesting and really, really fun part of esports that, I mean, outside of the professional levels of it all, like you don't necessarily get that often because you're not necessarily following the same team, you're not necessarily following the same players every week. So it's always fun when you have some sort of like small storyline, whether it be like a playoff run that a team's having, where like you're slowly starting to learn about them. It's really fun to put it all together. Like Hunter, Mega, I mean, you guys have to really enjoy putting together like either putting together or creating a storyline for a team that you guys have seen a couple times on broadcast before, right?
Absolutely. But easily, it's the reason of all of the community elite, CGL is my favorite, because like don't get me wrong, you can, if you try really really hard, you can build storylines with BPL and other leagues like that, but like very consistently, because those are draft league formats, it's like player turnover is high. They're switching teams all the time. You can generally track a player, but you can't track anything beyond that, right? But CGL, where it's these pre-made teams, these teams come into it, and you see these same rosters, these same cores over and over again. It being able to build up a narrative, as well as like just the pure satisfaction that like tickles your brain in the moment, right? Like there is nothing that feels better to me than I've already come in with the idea of storyline, and I already see my observers, like without saying a word, have tapped into that, and they're like, "Oh, they're showing off this player that I, can hype up to talk about why this team is doing this and how we're building and things like that." Like being able to do that with certain observers, where no words have to be said, everybody's just on the same page. It's easily the best feeling in the world when you're casting.
Yeah, no, I get you there, and like that's really from like a director, like producer point of view, like that's really important to me as well. Like I'm thinking back to the Funhaver LAN, and I have the casters in my ear, like pretty softly, but I have them in my ear, so I'm like trying to listen to them, mention certain players, and then take the cameras of those players. Like yeah, they're talking about someone, um, like that goes less into the storyline part, but like if they're talking about someone, I would like to see that person as well, like making that connection between, like building that synergy between our talent and then like the actual production stuff. I think it's like the overall big picture there, and that like when you get that connection there, it just creates such a big like aha moment for like on broadcast, I would say.
Hunter, what about you?
No, I agree very heavily with Megalass's point, where you could go into BPL and it's like you could say, "Oh yeah, these players played together once," or these teams have. You could throw a lot of narratives together, but having something that is concrete far ahead of time it just does genuinely make it easier. If I can go in knowing, all right, I already know the narrative of this match, I already know what I'm expecting myself and my co-caster and my producing team to bring up and be able to show. It makes the process a lot easier because I know what I need to zero in on, and it makes telling the story that much easier. Because while we have been following the story, maybe this is somebody's first time watching like CGL, or maybe the first time in a while where they don't fully understand it, and we're here and able to essentially catch them up in like the 10 minutes that we have between start and actual game beginning. So I just like having that opportunity to do so. I also kind of like the challenge of making a story out of almost absolutely nothing. Because if you can do that, I mean, you got to be somewhat good at what you do. Which, hey, you got to love telling a story at the same time. Which I assume all three of us and all four of us to this extent love to do.
Yeah, I guess this brings up an interesting question I have, because like for fun, I'll mention Funhaver as an example where like each tournament generally is a lot of pickup teams, right? Where it's like players just kind of choose whoever and they'll play, and sometimes they'll make deep runs. So I guess you guys kind of alluded to it, but from like a casting point of view, do you prefer casting in those like structured league formats where the same teams are kind of coming back each time and you sort of know what you're getting, you can predict it? Or maybe, like you said, kind of pulling something out of nothing where it's these new teams, this fresh blood, or like this mismatch of teams where, and like Funhaver, it's the same sort of group of players for the most part. And there's obviously potential for Cinderella runs for like new players to come in. Like we had one player called, I think, Viking Helm 91, I think, completely unknown player. I'm pretty sure he was an alt, but this guy came in and won an event and has not played since in Valorant, like in like any Valorant event. It was crazy. So like what stuff like that, I guess, where it's like you have these sort of um, kind of matching kind of appear out of nowhere, but it's a little bit more unstructured tournaments versus like the league format where you kind of get where you know what you're getting, and it's very organized and sort of you can keep coming back to it every week. I guess that's my.
I mean, Hunter, Mega, do you guys want to answer this? Or
Oh yeah, this is an easy answer, and unfortunately, the answer is yes and no, because there are two different sides to a caster. There is the caster that goes in with a serious mentality, that wants to focus on telling the story, that wants to focus on making sure that every moment that happens is brilliant and impactful as it possibly can be. But there's also the fun side of things they have to take into account. Or if I'm doing something like a charity event, or if I'm doing something where it is like BPL, it is something where you're able to kind of be more lax, more fun about it. So it kind of just depends which side you like indulging in more, whether that's the serious side or the more fun side. Which, me personally, after all these years, I still don't know the answer of which I like more. I think I'll figure that out eventually, but I'm curious how you two feel about it, honestly, because I feel very 50-50 about it.
See, like me personally, at the end of the day, it's just a different kind of storyline, right? That, a player who comes out of nowhere, hypes up, wins an event, then just disappears into the night. Like that in and of itself is its own storyline, right? And being able to go event to event, like Hunter said, like, it's one thing to be like, oh, these are established teams, these are the people we know, I'm not saying that that is like 10 times easier or anything like that, but obviously that's easier because you can build with your narratives, right? You're coming in already knowing this team is the underdog. This team is who's expected to go far. But being able to do that on the fly with just a flex performance, I think especially for the different kinds of casting, like it's one of the main reasons that I actually don't like doing color, despite being a color caster, is because so much of that gets to be in the play-by-play hands. Like, yes, you still get to help with crafting that narrative as a color caster, but play-by-play, especially in a situation like you described where a player comes out of nowhere, like the height moments you can get off of that, the lines that you could just rapid fire off your brain, it truly would be euphoric.
I think my answer is gonna be, I think having structured teams versus like kind of pickup teams or a draft league like what BPL is. They both have their own charm. CGL is a like one that we talk about a lot here because we all kind of work there or cast there. CGL, you have these basically legacy teams that have been around for seasons and years, and they're either always competing or they've won multiple championships in a row. There was a team who won both seasons in basically everything in a tier. The forget what season it was. The 2 real seasons and the 2 goats tournaments that CGL had, and it was fun to talk about them, saying like, "Hey, yeah, this team is right now the team to beat and everything." And then at the end of their last game, they said, "Hey, this is probably it for us. Like, we had a lot of fun. We want to move on and do other stuff." And it's like it sucked seeing that go because like, hey, this team has been around. This has always been a fun storyline, saying like, hey, they are a good team. Everyone knows they're a good team. They are basically the kings of this tier. And then they announced they're gone. It's like, well, they ended the story right there. So it was fun to see that. But then with BPL and like stuff where it's draft and pickup teams, it's always kind of fun as well to see like, okay, you're picking up players from teams that you've casted in the past, and you're trying to build that storyline. Like, hey, yeah, these 2 players have maybe like these 2-3 players have played with each other on a team maybe 2 years ago and haven't done anything since, but like they have that knowledge, and you're trying to build up that storyline. Like, hey, they're trying to get it all back together again. It's really fun. I think they each have their own charm to it. I think a more like legacy team, kind of like what I said with CGO. I think that one's a little bit better because you kind of have like maybe a 1.5 2-year long story that is being told, and you're being able to follow it. But there is the charm to like pick up teams and having these one-off kind of runs where it's like no one knew about them. They won. They're just leaving. They're not coming back. They did what they wanted to do, and that's it. And I really like seeing that, but at the same time, it's like, you were so good. Please come back. Like it was fun to watch you. I don't want to see you go. Like, this is not how I thought you would end it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are great questions, like answers. I think, because I asked this question from like a stats point of view, since I do a lot of that data research. Like having I think for me, like with Fight Night, I've had to very much focus on the players compared to the teams, and teams pretty much stay the same. But like, oftentimes you'll have like teams switch, or not teams, but like you'll have players kind of switch teams, for example, and like especially in Valorant where it's very much pickup. At least in like the Funhaver, right? Is if I try to do it based on teams, or if I try to put focus on teams, it doesn't make sense. There's just not that like historical, so it's very like player focused. So like in some instances, I do kind of wish there were more cases that I worked in like a structured league base where for a stats point of view, there's a whole playground things, because teams are constantly like, with the structured teams, you kind of can create narratives out of numbers, right? And like much better narratives. Whereas like with a player point of view, when you're doing tournament to tournament, there's only so much context you can do. And is it like, oh, it's because this player is good, or did they get carried by some other dude, or like it's very day to day. So that's kind of like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun no matter what. They both have their own kind of charm to it, and especially like in what you said there, with everything kind of being stats based. Like, that's one thing I wish we had more of, is like seeing like how fun stats, just how good a team was or how good a certain player was with stats. We're slowly starting to get that more now. But like it would be cool to look back, like if there's been a player that's been playing in one of these leagues for years, like seeing like their progression. But Mega Hunter, are there any questions you guys want to ask T? Mega, unless you have another one, don't ask the one you're gonna ask.
Okay, see, you say this every time, and it spoils the hype moment. I know not to ask that one, Dex. I'm not stupid. I know that's the last bit. Dex is actually insulting my set. Actually, no. Listen, T, I'm gonna have to ignore you for a second to rant about this Dexatron guy, because he just absolutely thinks I'm stupid. Doesn't know anything that I would be on about. But you know what? It's fine. Truthfully, I don't have any other questions. Just because, again, you've explained it very well about just sort of the different views and stuff. The things that a technical director, if I could speak, has to be able to think about, because this is all again happening just in the moment in your headset. All of these different things that you've talked about are all just occurring, and you just kind of have to live with it.
I'll ask a pretty basic question, and I've asked this one a couple of times, but I think it's very interesting to kind of hear what it is after kind of talking for the last hour and change. I mean, in terms of how long you've been doing this, what would you say it was either the most important or the hardest lesson you had to learn?
The hardest lesson I had to learn. Um, Let's see. That's an interesting question. Mostly because a lot of the lessons I learned per se, I'm thinking from like I, I'll use corporate buzzword term here, but like soft skills. So it's like soft skills basically is sort of your like communications, personality, and stuff. It's everything outside of like the technical point of view and like your interpersonal relationships, I guess, with people, and like to like when because there's always drama in esports, and I've like had my own fair share of drama, but like those things. I think I've always sort of kind of rolled off the tongue, or not rolled off the tongue, but rolled off the what's it called? I totally just lost my train of thought. But like I would say the like one of the other big lessons I've learned is to just always keep improving. And I think for me, like the reason I got into stats and the reason I like do a lot of stats work is because I think there's a niche there, and I've sort of found my groove there. And I think it's important for people in esports to find, you know, like find not necessarily what they're good at, but also find a need of people, So I think that helps you grow as a person in like esports. It also helps build the broadcast, and it also kind of just builds more skills. And then I had one more, and I've completely just lost my train of thought entirely. So I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, I would say that's. Oh no, the last one I did. Okay, I did remember. Um, I think it's important to have backup plans of on the esports stuff in general. Um, I think I was talking to someone recently about this, about like people who like are specialized in like one league specifically for one game in like one role. And I think that like you either got to put everything into that and like consistently look at what other people are doing and see how you can beat them, and how you can take from them and be better than them, or have the backup thing of like something else that you can excel at or something else that you can dive into, because I think in esports specializing is not necessary. Like it's good, but at the level that we're at, it's more hurtful than good. If you're like aiming to grow, um, though, like at least from like my point of view, that was like the lesson I had to learn, because I started as an observer, and then observing, like I pivoted, not pivoted, but like I did producing and stuff, like observing, producing. Those were kind of my two niches. And then this year, I started doing a lot more replay because I realized in like a lot of the places that I've done that observing is pretty. I don't want to say saturated. It's definitely not saturated, but like I'm not as good of an observer as like the people I work with. And like producing, there's not a lot of production, like of people to come in and produce gigs or like direct gigs, because usually you'll have your producer, like the person who's coming up with the league, just do the production directing themselves, right? So from my point of view, I was like, okay, how can I make myself more valuable? And that's like where I started learning a lot more replay up, and that's mainly why I posted a lot of this Twitter stats stuff this month, is because I wanted to start to tell people, or like broadcast to people, that hey, I'm a stats guy, I can do all the stats stuff. um, so yeah, I would say those are like some of the lessons I had learned.
Yeah, and definitely like branching out, especially with like casters. Like we've had on Hot Sauce and Delo, two casters who have a wide variety of games that they do. And like in the case of Delo, like there are some times where they will cast games not truly knowing it. They'll just go headfirst into it, and it's like I wish I had that confidence to go into a game that I've never necessarily played or never necessarily casted before, and just go out and knock it out of the park. Like I I will always kind of say I truly think, like, at least for myself, if I'm gonna cast game, I at least want to play it a little bit, so I generally know what's going on. But there are some people out there like D'Lo, and this is not a slight at him, who who will watch a little bit of it, will play maybe a little bit of it, and then they'll just go headfirst into casting it, and they will just do incredible with it, which I think is a true skill. But yeah, but not being specialized or not specializing in one thing is like a very important thing that I think everyone, especially in the community or grassroots area of esports, like yeah, should do. Don't just focus on one game. Don't just focus on one role. Try to do as much as you can, because you never know what you might find that you actually really enjoy doing. All right, Mega.
What?
Your time to shine.
I'm shy.
Wow,
It's a big
didn't
question.
even
I've been
yeah, no, didn't even like intro, because this is literally like the last thing we do before we get out. Dex sometimes likes to say the outro and then do this and then say the outro again. I think last week we literally outroed like 3 times. Fun fact, go back and watch it. It definitely happened.
Yeah, no, because I sucked at outroing.
Listen, it's fine. You're
Same,
working
bro.
on it. That's it. Hey, you're improving at it, right? That's all that matters. Anyway, this is a very hard hitting, completely real esports question. All right, T. Like, I need you locked.
I'm ready.
in here.
I'm all right.
Have you heard or watched the show Blue's Clues?
Yes, I have actually.
Okay.
I actually cite it as the main inspiration of all my esports knowledge and
Perfect.
background. Yeah.
Perfect. That's
A
good. That's
connoisseur,
important,
man.
right?
Mhm.
So listen, what is your reaction to the information that the landlord of the house where Blue's Clues takes place is listed on the deed of the house as Mr. Salt?
As Mr. Salt? What?
Mr. Salt is listed as the landlord of the house on the deed of the house.
Okay, that is pretty big, I would say. That is some earth shattering. That might be like Watergate level news. Like
See,
uh,
I'm happy because the last few weeks, or the people we've had on, they don't know ball, but you clearly know ball here. So you know what?
I
You
mean,
realize
dude,
the potential.
I'm trying to remember. Okay, honestly, I'm trying to remember like how relevant Mr. Salt was in this show. Like
He wasn't.
this,
He was a salt shaker on the table.
He was there.
yeah. But you're telling me this man let some two random ass dudes walk in and control an entire piece of three, and like
Three.
control all the animals there, and like never. Dude, what does he charge for rent then?
That's what
I
I'm
have
saying.
to
See,
know.
there's so
It's like
much that actually needs to be known here.
is the
And there's no
rent
info.
like finding the clues? Was that it? Is like Mr. Salt like he's not able to go out basically, and so like he needs help, and that's what the clues were. I don't know. This is a whole. We need an episode dedicated to solving this mystery.
Almost like we need some clues for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the entire point of Blue's Clues is solving mysteries.
True. That could be the revival. Is specifically
It's
looking
not
into
dead.
the
Blue's Clues is not dead. They're still making
Is
stuff
this
for
still-
Blue's Clues.
Is it really?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole yeah.
Yes.
They
There was
dropped
a
like
movie
a Blue's
2 years
Clues
ago.
movie 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. But like, is there an actual show about? Like, is there?
Yes.
Oh, damn.
I don't remember the
Alright,
dude's name. I always forget his name.
Is it
But there's
Joe?
some dude. No, Joe is the second
Is it
one. There's
Joe?
a third dude.
Adam.
Maybe it's Adam. I don't know. Listen, Dex, it's really great how this esports broadcast probably has a higher likelihood of getting a collab with Blue's Clues before like somebody big in Overwatch like we were planning.
Yeah, let's get Joe on the podcast, guys.
No,
I'm sure
gotta
he
get
has
Steve.
insights
We gotta
on
get Steve.
esports production.
No offense to Joe,
True.
they're getting the boy Steve.
True, that's true.
Apparently, the name is Josh. Yeah,
Josh,
they
that
hosted
is
the,
it, yes,
the-
that's it.
Fair
yeah.
enough. Josh makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, but I think that's a good point to call this one. T, thank you so much for coming out this week. I know I had asked you a couple weeks ago, and I've tried to get you on as soon as we could. And thank you so much for honestly jumping at this one, like jumping at when I asked you if you were able to come on tonight.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's cool to be on these. I don't do podcasts often, so it's nice.
Yeah, and I think you said, or at least I'm getting that you've listened to some of them. I think one of the biggest reasons like why I want to start this is so that there's people behind the scenes actually get some time to like actually show themselves rather than just having it be like a name at the end of a season or just someone in a Discord server that has the roles. Like I always wanted it to be like we're trying to get the people who don't necessarily get the credit to have them come on and like actually talk about why they love doing this and give them the credit they rightfully and truly deserve.
Yeah, nice.
Right. But Hunter, Mega, thank you guys as always for joining me again this week. And everyone, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you follow all of us on Twitter. Make sure you go follow T if you want to see all those great stats, graphics, and stats coming up here soon on their Twitter over there as well. And make sure you tune in next week for, as always, another episode of the For the Love of Prod podcast where I don't know who the guest is going to be. I really have to start reaching out to people a little bit earlier than maybe a day or two beforehand. But that will do it. Again, everyone, make sure you go follow us on Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube,
Twitch.
don't have that yet.
Spotify. Live
Spotify.
stream coming soon.
God, where's
Maybe.
the Twitch at?
Yeah, someone's gonna take the For the Love of Prod Twitch. But
I'm sure it exists.
Yeah, and go follow us on Spotify as well. We post the videos and the audios on Spotify, or the audio on Spotify and the videos on YouTube. So make sure you go follow us there. And again, everyone, thank you so much, and make sure you tune in next week for another episode of For the Love of Prod.